Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Kinzie. I am going to be going over uh, compensation and design employee compensation today. Just to introduce myself real quickly. My name is Brian Kinzie. I'm an HR consultant. I've been doing this professionally doing HR for 25 plus years. Before that, well, I shouldn't say before that, but I've been doing consulting work for the last 6 years. And I'm going to kind of roll through a few things today. Here are our learning outcomes. Understand the lead, match, and lag pay strategies, which is kind of your strategy for how you want to pay your people. Understand relationship between compensation and motivation. Know the basics of structuring bonus plans for your people so they're set to drive the behaviors you want to see in your organization. The concept of total compensation. We'll talk a little bit about non-financial rewards and how they can enhance what you're offering. And we'll talk a little bit about the legal issues that surround the area of employee compensation. So we will go on ahead and dive straight into it here. If I can get my screen to move, and it's not moving. That's interesting. Well, I'm clicking. There it is. Okay, it moved that time. I got it. That's really strange. Okay, this was just making beeping sounds at me. All right, I've already talked about myself, so we'll move on from there. Pay strategies. Let's talk about the lag strategies. There's 3 different things that companies can do for paying people, or they can do kind of a mix of them depending on the roles. We'll start with what's called the lag strategy. This is when you're deciding that you want to pay lower than average wages to your workforce. Areas where this makes sense is if you're a startup or a nonprofit and you have limited resources, you simply can't afford to pay but so much to your employees. That's a common area where you see lag. Organizations, particularly nonprofits, where you're working for a purpose. Their people are driven to come work for your organization because they believe in your cause, and they're willing to make less money as a result of that, because they really want to see the mission of the organization succeed. So organizations where there is a strong purpose to the organization, a lot of times will lag a little bit in pay. Other times the lag might make sense if there's not a lot of competition in the labor market, like at times when there's really high unemployment, lots of people available to work, you might not be having to pay as much to be able to get talent in the door and to keep them working for you. And similar to that, if you're in an environment where a new hire can be really rapidly trained and brought up to speed. So like, let's say a fast food worker, not a whole lot of training to be able to get a person off the street and out there and handing burgers to people successfully. So that those situations where you're not having to spend a lot of time getting people trained, those can be situations where lagging the market average for pay can make sense. Your risks if you're using this is that you can lose key employees to competitors, because people can leave to make more money elsewhere. There's also a little bit of risk with not being able to attract people to come to your organization as well. So those are risks if you are choosing lag. The next strategy, and this is by far the most common, is match, where you're basically the company, you're trying to pay average market wages to people. This is, like I said, this is what most companies do, certainly not all, but probably 70–80%, somewhere in that neighborhood, would say that they follow a matching strategy. It's common when you want to have a competent workforce, you want people to feel like their pay is fair. You've got the financial ability to pay your average market rates. It's a normal competitive labor market. There's not high or low unemployment, and your turnover is acceptable. It's you're losing some people, but not you don't have a whole lot of churn going on with the organization, so you're comfortable with the level of turnover. And it's what most companies try to do for pay overall. Your main risk here, if you do decide to use the matching strategy, is people leaving your organization to go work for the person who's going to pay top market value. So that's when you have your good employees specifically targeted by competitors to come work for them, and they're offering more money to go work in that environment. So that's always the risk if you're doing match. Final pay strategy, lead. you're paying top market value. You're paying higher than the average wages. Where you see this most, if you are in a growth mode and you're trying to attract people to come to your organization, you're paying for talent, you're paying for people to leave good jobs with competitors that they like. The only way you're going to be able to wedge them out of those organizations is pay them more, offer better opportunities. So that's when you might want to go with a lead strategy. If it's a highly competitive labor market, you might want to choose to go in that direction. If you have a job where it takes a long time to get somebody up to speed before they can really be successful, those are situations where you might want to have a lead strategy. So like if you're, let's say, an engineering firm and you have a really complex product that you are making and designing and selling to your customers, it might take 2 years to get somebody from when they walk in the door the first day until they really know the product and can be at full steam. You don't want to be losing people to your competitor because of pay issues when you had to put that much investment into them. And you also see lead strategies when there's a high focus on quality. You want to avoid turnover. And frankly, if you just don't want to hear people complain about the pay. So the risk of lead, obviously, it's expensive. If you want to be out in front of the market for pay, that can be costly for your organization. So key takeaways from understanding these strategies is be intentional. You don't want to just be paying people kind of randomly based on what you're feeling like that day. You need to have an idea for your organization for how it is that you want to compensate the folks that work there. It might be different for different levels of the organization. You might have certain parts of the organization where you need to pay at a lead, but other parts where you can pay at a lag. But have an idea of what it is that you're trying to do in terms of how you're trying to address the workforce. And then final note for this is to be flexible. You don't tie yourself up in knots trying to stay within a certain strategy if it's not working for you. If you have someone just incredibly talented that you desperately want to bring into your organization, be willing to pay for it, even if you do have an overall lag strategy. So don't get yourself hung up over a few $1,000s and lose really talented people because of it, if you can avoid doing that at all. So be flexible with what you're doing. And as market conditions change, you might need to change this strategy as well. So that's your key things for pay strategy. We will move on to compensation motivation. If any of y'all ever took Psych 101 in school, you probably have seen this before. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the reason I bring it up here is because compensation is at the bottom of the hierarchy. It is really, really critical. What people make for income is what is taking care of their food and their house. And that is the physiological safety and security bottom of the pyramid for people. So it is absolutely critical to get the comp right as far as being able to motivate your people and to take care of their basic needs. You're not going to get high performance out of people if they don't have those bottom categories of the Maslow's hierarchy taken care of. Now, you get your high performers from a job sense. That's when they have high self-esteem and great self-actualization on the job. But if you're not taking care of the stuff at the bottom, you're not going to get that stuff at the top. So that's why I wanted to show that real quickly here. As far as motivation, a few things that you want to keep in mind as far as how to motivate your people. Equity concept, the theory of equity is that you're getting from your employer what you're giving to your employer. So equal effort, equal pay. So people need to be able to see that how they're being rewarded ties directly back over to what they're giving to their employer. If you're out there and you're killing yourself on the job and you don't feel like you're getting rewarded for it, that's really demotivating for people. Vice versa, if you're just throwing money at people and they're not responding, then that's probably a waste of your money. So equity, having that balance in place. Expectancy, clear connections between how you perform and what you get in return. So if you know I do X, Y, and Z, this is what I'm going to get from my company in return. It needs to be clear to people how what they do is going to impact their pay and compensation. And then the final theory to kind of talk about here is reinforcement. You reward the behaviors you want to see repeated. So if somebody's doing something you want to keep seeing them do, you want to be rewarding them for that behavior. Just basic positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, way more effective than negative reinforcement for what it's worth as well. So reward the behaviors you want to see repeated. So even if it's something small and you want to see them do it again, have repeat it. Like, if a person it does something small for you and you like it, buy them lunch, give them some sort of reward for it so they realize that that's something that's valuable to you and that you want to keep seeing out of the person. So those are some basic motivation things. Also for employee motivation, I have this in big letters here on purpose. Review your pay of your employees annually, if at all possible. When employees don't receive reviews, the end result is they feel undervalued and unappreciated, which is not going to help with your motivation at all, obviously. People are used to seeing annual adjustments for the most part. If you're not doing it, they feel like they're falling behind, especially when there's high inflation environments like what we're currently in. People's pay, they'll go back and they'll look at their pay and be like, you know what? Inflation's gone up by 9%. My pay's only gone up 3% for the past 2-3 years, where it's stayed flat. That's really demotivating to employees when they feel like they've been doing good work. So you want to make sure that you're having those pay discussions on an annual basis and doing reviews. I've always had sort of mixed feelings about reviews in some ways, which I probably shouldn't say as an HR person, but I'm going to. If they're just a paperwork exercise, they're fairly useless. But if you are doing a review and they are focused on goal setting for the next year and setting out goals for the organization and how that person's job is important for reaching those goals and what you expect from that employee, those types of forward conversations are really good. Those are valuable conversations to be having when you're setting those goals and drawing in that link between expectation and what they're going to get in return. For organizations that don't do reviews, I talk to people who work in those organizations. It is always brought up as a complaint by the employees in those organizations that they're not getting an annual review. It's people that hate the review process, but believe me, the thing that they hate worse than the reviews is not getting one. So make sure you're doing reviews. Try to do a little bit of a compensation adjustment each year, if at all possible, within what you are able to do on a financial basis. Let me see here. Let's go on to, oops, how can I go backwards? Nope, I did that. Okay, good. Excellent. All right, here we go. Bonuses and driving performance. Bonuses are really critical if you want to make employees want to go above and beyond. If you want your employees to go above and beyond, they need to feel like there's some sort of reward for that. Bonuses are a great way to get people to do something a little bit beyond just doing the bare minimum for the job. So if you can set a bonus and you can structure it around outcomes that you want to see repeated in your organization, or reinforcing what a goal is, like, we need to get X done this year. You're going to be the person that helps us reach there. This is going to be what your bonus is based on. And if they can see what that correlation is, that's a really good way to drive the behaviors you want out of your employees. A lot of companies do traditional quote unquote Christmas bonuses. Those are nice, but they don't do a whole lot to actually drive behavior. People kind of end up viewing them as part of their base compensation. So that's not something that's particularly useful for your organization. It can be helpful in some sense for some retention. Employees view it as nice, but it's not going to drive behavior. A lot of times you can get more bang for your buck with your bonus money if you are structuring the bonus to where they can see what they do on the job impacts what they're going to get for their bonus. So, so that kind of hits the main things on bonuses. Other things for bonuses, again, if you want them to drive your performance, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound, SMART goals. If it's measurable at all possible to be measurable, you want to set to be measurable. So you can, like I'll use sales as an example. You sold 5 million widgets. Terrific. Okay, here's going to be your bonus for selling 5 million widgets. So you can try to have it be as specific as possible there. Those are all really useful things to have. Attainable. If you're setting 5 million widgets as your goal for the person, but there's no way in the world they're going to be able to sell 5 million widgets, that's not a SMART goal. You want it to be something they can actually achieve. It needs to be relevant, something that's really actually useful to the organization, and also a time frame for it. You don't want to just have something open-ended without any time frame for when they need to achieve the bonus or achieve that goal. For your bonuses, particularly for salespeople, I'll come back to that in a second, actually. So keep it simple, keep it so they can see how their actions are impacting the bonus. Try to have it reinforcing the company values. Salespeople in particular, you don't want to capture salespeople. That is going to be completely demotivating for them. You definitely want to have it so they can always feel like they can sell more and make more money. Good salespeople are pretty competitive. They like to have that carrot out there in front of them. And that's what you usually get to get the best performance from them. Always make sure that when you're setting up your compensation plan for your salespeople, that you calculated the best case scenario for their performance, and make sure you can actually afford to pay out that kind of a bonus. You never want to set up a sales incentive program for somebody, have them absolutely crush it, and then you come back to them later on and say, yeah, you know what, that's not working for us. We're going to have to dial this back. You will lose those salespeople when you do that, without question. They're going to leave you if you dial back their sales incentive after you've set it up. So figure out what the best case scenario is. Make sure you can afford it. Always have an incentive to sell. And remember, they're probably never going to be happy with it. That drive that makes them good salespeople means that they're always wanting more. And so no matter what kind of compensation package you set up, that competitive drive that makes them a good salesperson probably is going to make them always want more from their sales incentive program. So if they're coming to you complaining about pay, you need to listen to it, you need to treat it seriously, but remember that they're always going to want more, and that's okay. I want to see that from salespeople. For people who are in the nonprofit sector and you're having fundraisers, which are critical for bringing in money to the nonprofit, in general, commission-based pay is highly frowned upon within the nonprofit world. It's not something it's not illegal to do it, but anytime a nonprofit has a lot of money going to its employees as opposed to the cause it's supporting, that can cause issues with the IRS. So you have to be really careful with it. There are things you can do in terms of structuring people's bonuses to, meeting funding goals for the organization, where you can set things up in that way to avoid that type of commission sale type of scenario. So there's things you can do to reward your money makers in the nonprofit world, but you need to be careful with how you go about that process. Personally, I like having part of their compensation, their bonus, essentially based on hitting the funding levels that are needed to drive the mission of the organization. You could also have it be a factor that plays into their annual review as far as what kind of an increase they could be getting from year to year as well. So did you meet your goals this prior year? If so, yes, you're going to make the full percentage increase. If you didn't, you're not going to. However you want to structure it, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but those are things you want to remember in the nonprofit world for that. Let's talk about concepts of total compensation real quickly here. Remember, pay is not just base pay and bonus. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into your total compensation for people. So that includes your paid time off, vacation, sick, or PTO, however you want to structure it, health, dental, vision insurance, life insurance, retirement plans like your 401ks, your simple IRAs, all those things. You can have stock options, ownership stakes. Some companies offer pet insurance, legal assistance programs. You have things that all companies have to offer, like the workers' comp and tax contribution, but all that goes into the total compensation for the person. So when you're structuring it, you need to keep in mind that it's not just the base pay you're having to pay out. You got all this other stuff you might be doing as well. You want to make sure that when you're setting up your bonus programs, not bonus programs, sorry, your like additional compensation things you're offering, like all these benefits, that they are things that you can actually afford as an organization. You need to be aware of the cost as you're getting into them. And then you also need to make sure that it's what your employees want. Ask your employees. And if you're sitting there thinking, I think I want to offer health insurance, ask your employees as a group, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? Sometimes the answer is going to be no. I've worked with some organizations that were looking at offering health insurance, and then they found out that most of their employees were either on a spouse's plan, or they had low enough income that they qualified for some subsidized plans through the marketplace. In which case, if the company had offered a health plan, it would actually have ended up costing them more than what they were able to get through the marketplace because of it being subsidized. So your attempt to be nice by offering health insurance could actually have costed your employees more money. That's not what you want to be doing with your benefits programs. You want your benefits programs to be something that is attractive and retains your employees. You don't want it to be something that makes them mad and drives them away. So ask your employees what they're interested in. They'll let you know, and it might not be across the board for everybody, but at least take into consideration what it is that they're interested in. Like I said earlier, understand your budget. Make sure that you know how much you can actually afford. One critical thing: never ever offer something and take it away unless you absolutely have to. It's really, really demotivating to have your benefits and then have someone come back later on and say, yeah, no, we're not going to do that anymore. That's never a good look. So try to make sure that you are understanding your budget and able to pay for it in the future. Those extra benefits are less important for recruitment, but for retention, they're really, really critical. People have a hard time leaving organizations that have really good benefits programs. And I would actually argue that since COVID came about, I've definitely seen the change in the marketplace where people are more interested in their benefits like health insurance and paid time off and considerations like that than they have been previously. So, and also, again, this is a really competitive job market right now. So these things are a little bit more top of mind for people than they might have been previously. There's also non-financial rewards. I think that for the nonprofit world in particular, this is important. It's important in the for-profit world also, but in nonprofits in particular, a lot of them, they might not be able to offer as high a pay rate, but they are able to offer flexibility for their employees in some cases. Things like work from home and hybrid arrangements are really, really popular. It definitely takes some intent on management where you're managing people more towards meeting their goals as opposed to, are they sitting at their desk at 8 a.m. Monday morning? You really need to be focused on that if people are working from home, as far as saying what the person's goals are and expectations and making sure they're meeting them. But I would argue you should be doing that whether they're at home or at the office. So but it's something that I think a lot of nonprofits have definitely taken advantage of being able to offer those types of arrangements. Nonprofits have also kind of been out front for promoting the 4-day work weeks, which are not widely adopted at this point, but if it's something you can offer as an organization, it's incredibly popular for people to be able to do their work in 4 days as opposed to having to be in the office 5 days a week. And those are things that if you can make work for your organization, don't cost you any additional money. So there's things that are non-financial rewards, seem small. Coffee. if you're giving your employees coffee every single day, don't take it away. It's a small thing, but again, it hits the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. You're feeding your people. Those things like coffee, food, snacks, they take care of the bottom of that hierarchy for Maslow, and it makes a huge difference for people. It's low cost, high reward for it. And finally, being nice to people. That's being nice is free. If you most employees, you've probably heard the phrase, people lead managers, not their employer. It's absolutely true. If you have a manager who's treating people poorly, that's going to be what drives them to go look for that next job. So I would say that if you are a company, you can still have high expectations and set clear expectations for your employees and be nice at the same time. It doesn't have to be exclusive between the two. So try being nice to people. One other thing I would say, as far as flexibility goes, and particularly with nonprofits, there is times when you do have to be, as a nonprofit, able to pay at market value, particularly for back office types of functions, where let's say you're a nonprofit and you need an accountant. Well, accountant can go work anywhere that needs accounting done. That for-profit, nonprofit, you're all still competing for the same talent. That's when you probably need to be following more of a match type of strategy. Flexibility that you can offer might be able to help with getting those people in the door, but might not be everything. Definitely something you want to point out to your board is, if you're trying to talk to your board to get more money for those positions, is pointing out like, hey, these people have options other than working for my nonprofit. We need to be able to pay accordingly, or be able to offer some nice things like flexibility, work from home. Let's see here. Last thing to hit on is legal considerations. Just a few things that are kind of big right now. Pay transparency. Some states and localities have passed laws requiring that ranges be posted for any job openings that are being put out online, or when you're advertising for an opening. This is becoming more and more common. In general, in the HR world, it's considered best practice to do this anyway, but it's also becoming a legal requirement. So if you're going to post something that's going to be out there nationally for people to see, you need to be compliant with the states that you have people applying from. So I would say you should probably pretty much be having your pay ranges out there for any openings that you have. So that's something to be aware of. And then finally, pay disparity issues is something to be aware of. Pay gaps between genders is a major issue within the United States. It's currently running roughly 80% for women versus what the men are getting. That is grounds for lawsuits. So you need to be taking a look at your workforces and making sure you don't have disparities between how people are getting paid, where there might be a gender bias that shows up. If there are differences between, let's say, what a woman is getting paid versus what the man is getting paid, and the EEO looks at it and there is a difference, there is a presumption of guilt in place. They are assuming that you are discriminating unless you are able to show otherwise. Now, if you have documented things in place where, like, this employee here hit these goals, they've been a high-level performer, it's documented, you can show why there's a difference between the pay for the two people and why it's not really equal work, then you're probably going to be safe. But if you don't have anything in place for it, if you just gave somebody $3,000 more a year to start working for you than this other person, that can cause you issues. So you need to be really careful around issues of pay disparity. In summary, be intentional with what you're doing. Have a strategy. Tie your compensation to the purpose of your organization. You want to make sure that if you have a philosophy where we take care of our people, we treat people well, make sure your comp is aligned up with that philosophy. Make sure that your compensation, how you're rewarding people, is rewarding behaviors do you want to see. It's tied to your values. You can set up your bonus programs to tie into your values. There's a lot of different things you can do with that. So tie your comp to your purpose and then execute your plan. Have a plan in place, tie it to your budget, but be intentional about how you pay people. And that's all I got.
That's all you got, Brian?
That's all I got. I could talk for another couple of hours.
I'm sure.
I won't do that to y'all.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the Facebook Live so we can have Q&A, because everybody who is an Empower People member has signed confidentiality. So everything we say at Empower People stays at Empower People. So we're not going to make the Q&A live on Facebook. So let me stop that.